people. Kind of bright. It's kind of quiet today also. Things have been picking up back here at the shop, so we're almost at full staff now, so that's kind of cool. Got cars in and out of here, so I got a little area I'm working with. And let's do a little update on this KA here. This is where I'm at. I got a intake manifold with the supercharger on. There's no gaskets or anything right now. I was waiting for the gaskets to come in. Kind of try to mock up a new tensioner. I told you guys I would be working on a new bracket to hold the supercharger. And as you can see right here, I kind of plows down a new piece. It's going to need some spacing behind here, but this is going to allow me to make a stronger piece to hold this bracket. This piece is a little thin piece of metal that I did just for a mock-up, so I didn't have to put the thick stuff on the table right away. But the bearing's going to go here. I also got a Quest alternator that I'm putting on, and I think I'm just going to roll with this bracket for now, just to get this thing going. I can always draw a new bracket later. This is where we left off at. I needed to get the correct valve lash, and I ordered in the shims. Here we have the OEM Nissan shims. So this is the route I chose to go. I learned a few things during this process about valve clearance, setting your lash. You know, you learn something new all the time. So I talked earlier about just machining these old shims down, and what I didn't know is about surface hardening. I guess everything on these have a surface hardening. I always thought, you know, people just used to grind the tips down so on the valve, so when they did that there was no surface hardening, or you're taking it away. But I guess a lot of the valves have enough hardening that you can actually take some off and it'll be fine. But with the shims, what I was talking about, taking them down, there's not enough hardening in that area, and you can't have, you know, the metal from the can beating down on it, because you're eventually just ruin it. You know, you bend it, you mushroom it, you're at a softer piece of metal out there. So that didn't stop me from keep on diving into it. So let me show you what I ended up doing. Granted, I've got these new shims. I had the old ones. I was like, let me see what I can do. So this is the OEM bucket, and it holds the shim. And I measured a couple of these, and I had all of them a little too thick. So what I ended up doing was, you know, calling around to the local machine shop, and they said, yeah, they have a surface grinder. And I guess the surface grinder holds them down with a magnet, and it just makes these passes over a surface with some, I don't know what grit they use specifically, but it ends up just grinding these down. And it's okay to go ahead and sand these down, because once you've set them into the cup, you're going to have hardened surface, and then the surface that they use isn't going to be touching any of the valve or the cam. So I was like, okay, so you need a surface grinder. I don't have one of those. The local machine shop actually doesn't even really use theirs. They just grind the valves down. So I was like, what can I do if I'm ever in the jam? So if you notice here, it's been sanded on the bottom. I wrote that so I can see. What I was doing was finding a piece of the very thick flat surface we have over there. It's probably not perfect, but you know, I guess they have a granite finite flat surfaces, but I didn't have that. So I ended up just like taking some of my DA paper, sticking them down on the flat surface, putting some oil down, and putting it in one of these cups like this, and essentially going like that until I sanded it down. I just kept measuring it with my micrometer until I got it to the thickness that I want. I'm like, cool. The only problem was it took one whole piece of sandpaper to get like 1 thou off, or if even so, and lots of that, and then, you know, blistering your hand, and it took forever. It would have taken me forever to get this all done. So I just wanted to see if I was ever in a jam or whatever, and I mic'd it from, you know, all the way around from center to edge, and they were pretty much on point. So it is possible to do. So that's kind of cool. So if I ever really needed to, and you know, these Nissan ones aren't available anymore, but they are, so that's cool that you can just buy these from Nissan. So they're still available to go ahead and get your correct heights. I ended up needing 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, oh crap, 9 different size shims to go ahead and get these correct. So, you know, in the future, if Nissan do discontinue these, I know I have a method. Well, if I'm in a pickle, I'd rather just go to the machine shop, get them to do it, but get your little suction cup out, stick it down, go at it like that if you want, but no need for all that. Just buy new ones. So I got my little calculations here, and then I actually wrote down what part number goes where. So I'm just going to go ahead and open all these up. I've already got all the buckets in there, and I'm going to go ahead and throw all the shims in, get the cams in, get the chain back on, get that all done, and move on from there. I think I've already showed you guys this already. Don't feel like doing it again. Shouldn't take too long, and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so this is it. Cams are in. Went ahead and got a little flashy here. I know I said I wasn't going to, but got me the valve cover powder coated. And if you guys haven't noticed already, went ahead and got my intake powder coated. And the supercharger's just on there, getting ready to get lined up. But that wasn't too bad. I know I said I wasn't going to show it, but whatever. Got pretty bored. Turned it on. You guys saw it again. This time I actually was able to check it. Got the cams in. Checked with the feeler. All the lash is set and good. Exactly where I wanted it to be. I'm kind of pretty stoked about this. It's all coming together pretty nicely. Gone ahead and got the dizzy in, got it timed. Got some new bolts. If you guys didn't know, still available from Nissan. Get it at Enjuku. Got a fresh valve cover gasket, and it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy about it. So on to the next stage. Gonna go ahead and finish this bracket, get the gaskets on here, get that all snugged up, get the tranny on, and then hopefully this will be in the next couple days. Shouldn't take too long. Just gotta get a little spot here. Might just do it on the ground. No big deal. Pretty good. Gonna call it a night. Wrap this up and put away my little toolbox here, and probably get cracking on this. I think tomorrow. Yeah. Back to working on this engine here, and you know, I got the head gasket in, did all the valves, did all the shims, and I was showing you guys about how I needed to finish up that bracket for the tensioner to make sure I've got a good tension on the supercharger, just to make sure there's no belt slippage. And it ended up being a little more than what I wanted it to be. I kind of went a little too crazy with it, and let me just show you guys the evolution of my bracket, I should say. I'll show you what I started with, or what it came with, and then what I thought, and then how many steps. It was not just a simple like boom, done for me. So yeah, let me show you guys what had ended up happening with that whole process. So I know I've showed you guys before, that was the original bracket, and these are some of the other ones, and I'll show you exactly what these ended up looking like on the engine and why I ended up changing them. And actually there's a few more here that you can't see. So this is the engine. This is what I ended up with. As you can see, I've got plenty of wraparound on the supercharger belt. It's got its own idler belt. It's got plenty of wrap around the alternator, and I even have my own adjustable tensioner for the belt there. Let me show you how I got to this point. All right, let's so first of all, this is what came with it. We had the stock bracket with it was cut for the bracing, and it just had a hole there where Kevin had this original idler on there, and he was using just a pry bar to pry the tension for the supercharger on the alternator. Now, was it working? We don't really know. Kevin didn't have a boost gauge on the car, and he felt the car was a little underpowered. It was probably working, to be honest. I think we've discovered that we had some other issues going on in the cylinder head. It was probably the lack of power that was going on, but it was a little flimsy. It didn't have a lot of wrap. Actually, it did have quite a bit of wrap around the supercharger, but there was really no way to tension this belt, and other than prying on it, loosening the bolts, and I just wasn't a big fan of that. Some of you may have noticed this is a Quest alternator. That's also something else I changed, and that kind of didn't help me. Everybody's always said that putting the Quest alternator on, and actually I've done it before too, is that you can use the stock alternator bracket. So what I went ahead and did was drew that original bracket Kevin had, and I was like, I can just make a beefier version of that bracket and everything should be fine. It won't be so flimsy, and maybe I'll just pry and tension on it. However, the sweep is not the same, so I just drew this off of the 240 alternator, and the Quest is completely different. So you can probably get it to work with the factory one, but with what I had drawn, it did not work. beefier version of this. I had to cut it up, so I can't show you. I don't even know where I put it. Didn't work, and I ended up cutting it up to try and get some of this. It actually was just sharing these 2 holes. I didn't like it, so I ended up doing something a little bit different. I was going to tension it, try to do a bend across here and tension it from the backside, but just the largeness of the Quest alternator kind of put that out of the way. As you can see, even on this bracket, it's very close to hitting it. So I'll show you what I did for the second bracket. Here's a thinner version of the second bracket. I was just using this for mock-up. This one actually has the dual holes. Actually, this is probably the third bracket. The second bracket had just 1 hole, and that 1 hole was going to share between the mounting of the alternator and the pulley on there for the tension, but that also didn't work out. I also did this bracket, which has a bend on it, and I was just gonna use this tensioner, same style tensioner in here, but with some measurements, when I got this in, it didn't measure exactly how I thought it was. This was ended up being too close to these bolt holes, and this just was too close to the edge to do the bend. So this is from a Maxima as a AC adjuster, and I thought it could work, and it's actually working pretty well. I did change the pulley size because the Maxima was too big. This is actually essentially a 3-piece bracket, and it ended up working out pretty well. The depth wasn't correct, so I'll show you down here. This piece ends up being welded on right around here to be for the adjuster, and then this piece is for the adjuster, but essentially it sits behind it to recess it enough. Kind of sits just like that, and that gives me my correct depth to allow this thing to line up, and gives me the ability to just loosen this here and go ahead and crank it for tension to go up. And that's practically the only way that it would work. I tried so many other, I tried sharing this bolt, moving this in. I tried to tension it from this way with this. I tried to use the OEM style tensioner from the back side. I tried it all, and this is practically the way that it worked out. And it's got some spacers behind here to make up the difference in the thickness of the plate. It's very sturdy, and I'm pretty happy with it. I'm actually very stoked about it. I said I wouldn't go overkill with the bracketry, but I did, and I'm very happy with it. So hopefully that doesn't slip. It's not fully tight right now, and hoping this deflection here won't cause anything, but I don't think it will. So now it's a matter of just re-gasketing this thing, putting the transmission on, sticking it back in, guys. Alright, so I'm going to pull the intake manifold as well as the old plate. I'm going to go ahead and spray paint it, but I've got a new supercharger gasket. This one's going to be obviously for the actual supercharger planet itself, and that's going to be for the throttle body pipe. Essentially comes up over the supercharger. Show you right here. Pipe comes up and over. So, yep. These are the best gaskets you're going to get for this. So, some other brands sell just like paper gaskets, but the OEM stuff is pretty darn good. So, I'm just going to go ahead and use those. Get those out and start pulling the intake right now. So the supercharger is all sealed up, intake manifold is sealed up, and it is fully bolted down. Hopefully we won't have any leaks. So now that the intake side is all done, it's all sealed, we should be pretty much ready to go in. With the supercharger sitting wider, I didn't think I was going to be able to get that in without physically bolting it in first and then dropping the engine down. So I'm glad it's done now. Only thing left is the cold pipe on this side, and I think I can get that inside of the car, so not to worry about it. There isn't much under the intake that's important. Just the coolant line. A lot of things are deleted on this, so makes it easier to install it. All that's left now is to do the fuel rails and the injectors. I'm thinking about putting that in first to just make sure everything clears. I'm also want to go ahead and delete a couple of the coolant pipes underneath there. I'm going to make a couple block off plates. I'll show you guys about that. And I'm not too sure that I'll be able to get an oil filter block to fit there for the oil cooler. I may have to end up making something custom. It sits so close to the supercharger. Once the bracket's finished painting, I can go ahead and just put it back on, tension that all back up again, move the alternator back up, and it should all be pretty much ready to drop in. Kind of excited about that. Pretty successful day. It's all on. Not many things left to do before it's ready to just drop back in. I'm gonna call it a night for tonight. See you guys tomorrow.